Okay, we are back. I'm very happy to have on the Goldstein on Gelt show author Merle Temple, who wrote the book called A Ghostly Shade of Pale. But not only that, he's a former FBI agent, and in fact, he signed on with the Mississippi Bureau of Narcotics when President Nixon declared the war on drugs. Merle, real pleasure to have you.
Oh, thanks, Doug. Great to be here.
So when I was reading the book and looking at your bio, I have to tell you, I was really kind of struck with the fact that when you were younger, in the times of President Nixon, you signed up, and really, frankly, from the stories I've read about you, you risked life and limb in order to declare and be part of the war on drugs. And yet today in America, it seems like the war on drugs is over, not because we won, but rather because drugs have all become legal. There is no war against the illegal side of it. Certainly not like when you started. How do you feel about that?
Well, when we started, we were very idealistic, naive, I would think would be safe to say, and we had really no idea what we were up against. And there was just a tremendous amount of money, illegal money, involved in drug trafficking. And if you worked hard and as an agent or an agency and you took out one major organization and you thought all was going to be well then, it really wasn't, because there were 4 or 5 waiting in the wings to take their place. When demand is so high and profits are so high, someone is going to step in and fill that void. And we learned pretty soon early on that it was kind of like trying to dam up the Mississippi River here, as we say, with a shovel. And so over time, I think many factors have figured in. The prison systems in America have just been overflowing, with people convicted of drug crimes, sometimes very minor drug crimes, and convicted and sentenced to very long draconian sentences. And, the system just won't bear that for very long. And so there's many factors involved, and I think to lead us to where we are today.
So do you think that the decision now to actually legalize the, for example, marijuana in Colorado was a good idea?
Well, it's hard for me to say it was a good idea, but I do think some adjustment had to be made about the long sentences that were being handed out for very minor drug crimes. I do believe that prisons are places we should reserve space for, just for those who truly scare us and are a real threat to our neighbors or to national security. And there's still a big war here on traffickers, I think, especially of certain types of drugs. But there is a movement away from some of the lesser offenses because for many reasons the system just won't bear it. And I think the cost to society, you have to weigh that in too. And do you lock someone up, say, for a minor possession of marijuana for a long, long time, separate that person from his or her family, and then all the effects on the family and children who are dependent on a breadwinner and for the parental figure in their lives and so on. All of those things have to be factored in.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm a little surprised. It sounds to me, I would have thought that someone who had been really, literally risked your life. Maybe you'll tell us that story in a minute about when you were out there in the field to try and stop some of these drug dealers. What you're saying, but maybe we should go into a little more in depth, because obviously, for example, marijuana is known to be highly addictive, right? It's certainly a big danger, which in and of itself can destroy a family, not just the father going to jail because he had it, but even if it's legal and he becomes addicted, that could certainly be problematic, no?
Well, it certainly could, and I've seen the effects of drugs, firsthand, and marijuana tends to be kind of a gateway drug to more addictive drugs and more destructive drugs. And I'm not saying that it should be legalized, but I'm saying, do you want to take up valuable jail space for someone who's found to possess, an ounce or a couple of ounces of marijuana, or do you want to lock up a first-time, small-time dealer who might be selling very small amounts within a limited group of people, and lock that person up for 10 or 20 years? In some of the sentences we have now under the federal sentencing guidelines, which also eliminated parole. And so when you lock somebody up for that, I mean, I think very practically it's a very terrible use of resources, and you have to just back up and weigh everything. Where can you do the most good in interdicting drugs and partnering with other countries on enforcement against production. And so you just have to work a little smarter. And I think because of what I've been through and being held hostage like I was undercover, and while they debated on where to put my body after they killed me, meeting contract killers who lured me out at Memphis to assassinate me, and my men and I being ambushed by a sniper in a terrible gun battle during a heroin deal, I think it gives me a certain credibility, I hope, to speak on this and call for a little common sense.
Yeah, that is true. We are talking with Merle Temple, who is a former FBI agent, a real hero to law enforcement, and he wrote a book called A Ghostly Shade of Pale. Merle, let's talk a little bit about your background. Not only are you an author, but you've been involved in drug enforcement and politics and public relations, and you've been on boards, and now you're writing about it. What's the common thread that got you to where you are today?
Well, I probably live 3 or 4 lives in one, and here in my old age at 66, I'm now writing about it. And Ghostly Shade of Pale is about the days when I left Ole Miss, University of Mississippi, and went right into drug enforcement. And when it was the whole concept was kind of new, and there weren't many of us, we were flying by the seat of our pants, and we improvised and made it up as we went along, just to survive sometimes. And I think that prepared me too for the coming battles in the corporate world and in high-level politics, for sure, where very little that you see is actually real, and nothing is ever quite as you see there. And you learn very quickly in all these aspects of my life that Lord Acton was right when he said that absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Well, I have to say that's a little bit depressing to hear you say that. So how come you ended up writing a novel when you had so much nonfiction and so many nonfiction stories you could have shared?
Well, it's much easier to write about it in a novel form, and I think in many ways you can reach people, and you have a little more leeway when you're using fictitious names, perhaps based on characters that you've met in your life or inspired by some. Some might be composite characters, but you have a little more freedom to tell what really happened and inform people about a history that they think they know, but they probably don't. And the reason I think some people who maybe don't read fiction or novels would like A Ghostly Shade of Pale and the two books in the trilogy to follow, A Rented World being the second, which I'm working on right now, is because there's a ring of truth in this fiction, because it's all gleaned from memory.
Mm-hmm. I got you. So it's got a real feeling of what actually happened. So tell us, in the book business that you are now in, where is this book going? I understand there's getting a little more excitement on the Hollywood scene too.
Yeah, we were invited out to Hollywood by the folks at Criminal Minds, a long-running TV show, and one of the guys there gave us a recommendation for the cover of the book, and we signed for the cast and did a tour of Hollywood, did radio and television, met with producers that made Saving Private Ryan, and a lot of fairy tale type experiences. And now, just recently, I had dinner with Morgan Freeman, and a friend of mine at Criminal Minds is writing the screenplay from A Ghostly Shade of Pale for him to read. So it's all very exciting, and we're just waiting to see what happens and where we're sent.
It does sound very exciting, and you have certainly been through many stages of your life, and it's great that you've decided to dedicate, not knowing when you write a book, and I've written a few books myself, I can tell you, you never know if anyone other than your mother's going to read it, but so it's a real act of love to give back, and that's what you've been doing. So tell us, in the last few seconds, how can people follow you and follow your work?
Well, the book and books to come are, of course, available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com, but they also can go to take a look at it in some of the reviews at www.merletemple.com, MERLETEMPLE.com, and they can send me a message there, too. I'd love to hear from people around the world and to make new friends. That's the best part of this whole process.
Sounds fabulous. All right, listen, Merle Temple, we are out of time, but I want to thank you very, very much for telling us a little bit about, not only about your book, but about your take on the current war on drugs. Merle Temple, best of luck. We will put links to everything, all the websites you spoke to, at the show notes at goldsteinongelt.com.
Thanks very much.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt Show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world, but if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt Show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt Show.